how does love operate, manifest, express itself?
Okay, now this is a particularly interesting part of Dr. Terruwe's works because she is very intrigued by the fine details of love. And it's especially helpful for counselors because when you look at a client, you're trying to assess what's going on in them. How much can they love? Where are they inhibited from loving? What are the distortions of love in their life? And she talks a lot about the importance of seeing love manifest in touch, in sight, and in speech. And this is fascinating because if you look at, say, touch, she tends to also talk about there are a lot of the people that you find in counseling, they sometimes wear masks. They're really not showing you who their true personhood is. And so what she talks about is how certain of these things, touch, sight, and love, either can be always genuine or maybe ingenuine or put on or false. And touch, she said, can be feigned. It can be ingenuine. So just because a person is touching you supposedly in a tender, loving way doesn't necessarily mean it's truly loving. Then she talks about sight. And she says that, notice that if you look in people's eyes, it's usually what they say, the eyes are the windows of the soul, because the will has very little influence over sight. That it's very hard to make your eyes look a certain way. So that's why often when you want to tell the person's telling the truth or not, you look right in the eyes, okay? And if you think about contemplation and the gaze of love, you'll notice that if a person is in love, let's say in love with the Blessed Sacrament, in love with another person, you can see it in their eyes. And it's very hard to feign. In fact, I think Dr. Terruwe says that it's almost impossible to really affect the eyes in that way. As far as speech can also be feigned. It can be ingenuine. But the one aspect of speech that she talks about as being hard to influence with your will in terms of putting on a mask is the tone of voice. Tone of voice, if you're not in a loving mood, it will come out in the tone of voice. So if you think about this in terms of your clients, it's a very helpful thing. And I guess the other thing that's interesting too is, again, she talks about how there's a difference also in sex difference, between men and women. Women tend to express their feelings of love in the tactile sense, in sense of touch. Men tend to, if they do it in touch, it's more like action. I'll show you that I love you by, look what I bought for you today. And they'll kind of put it in front of your nose. While a woman would be more likely perhaps to say, look how much I love you, and she'll caress you or stroke you. And it's very interesting to see there's a little bit of a sex difference there. I think one of the things that's most interesting too, you'll hear in your clients, is that touch is something that's often disturbed when there are emotional and spiritual problems. Those people who cannot really show touch without feeling something funny in themselves. And tenderness is a key thing to look out for. If you see that your client cannot be tender to other people, or even, let's say, a dog or a cat, then you usually think that there's something going on, something's not right. So this is an area to really think about and meditate on. So maybe if you want to just go back and maybe reread that section of the Abode of Love where she talks about the manifestations of love, you'll find that very fruitful. Okay, how about another question?